Welcome to Houston Sports Talk with your host, Robert Land.
Thanks for checking into the best Houston sports podcast. And joining me to look at the Rockets' future is Frank from HTX Chop Shop. The Twitter Spaces with Frank and the boys at the Chop Shop has been my favorite place to go to for analysis and getting in the mood of the fan base this year. And I want to thank you, Frank, for coming on. How are you feeling now that the season is officially over?
I think I'm feeling pretty good. It got a little rough there in the middle after the losing streak we had, and basically the complaint all over Houston was, why aren't we seeing these young talented players that we drafted on the court? But I think as they kind of went towards the end of the year, that we got to see what we had in some of these young guys. I think the fan base is on a good note right now. So I think that's a great way to go into the offseason with the team.
Yeah, definitely a great way to end the season with some of the guys really showing out. And before we get into what the Rockets are going to do in the offseason, what we think maybe the Rockets should do in the offseason, do you want to tell people a little bit about your hoops background for those who don't know?
Well, I don't have a huge hoops background, but as far as me playing basketball, I played football. That was my sport. I played at Prairie View A&M University. I was a center over there. But as far as when it comes to basketball, I just grew up watching it. My dad was a huge Rockets fan. He used to watch, Dream, and the teams in the early '90s play. And I just remember as a kid just staying up late watching games. I remember a lot of the Lakers games for some reason, because I remember I'd be tired the next day at school. But just staying up late watching the games. And for me, where I really fell in love with the team was when Steve Francis was drafted. I was kind of a young guy, preteen around that time frame, and he became mine. Every generation you have a guy that you just idolize, or that's your guy on the team. And Steve Francis was mine. With Coutinho, the teams that we have with Moochie Norris, with Eddie Griffin, rest in peace, Mo Taylor. So that group right there, Kelvin Cato, I loved them, even till the tail end when Yao came, and really hurt me when they kind of broke that up. But that was what drew me into the Rockets, and I've been addicted ever since. Just a diehard fan.
Sounds good. And right when you got into it, I was doing some work for the Rockets. For those that don't know, I spent a year with the Rockets over at Channel 20. I was helping out shooting and editing everything that they needed, doing feature stories and stuff like that. But, I'm a Houston native. I go back to I start watching with Calvin Murphy and Moses Malone, sort of the tail end of that, the 81 finals I vaguely remember. And then once they get Akeem and Ralph and that whole thing starts up, I get into it. I've been into it ever since. It's just of all the sports in Houston, and I love them all, the Rockets have a little bit more of a place in my heart, I think, than a lot of them. Part of it's the championships, but I think it's just the fact that you feel a little bit more intimate with NBA guys because you see their faces and you feel like you get to know them and stuff like that. And I just want to remind everybody listening also that, or watching, that you can listen to this on my podcast. If you're not watching, you can watch it on YouTube, and I'm breaking down some of my conversations into 2 or 3 minute videos. So if you get too busy, you got that too. And Frank, I just want to go back to like this team and this year, and how much do you make of what KPJ and Jalen have done recently, considering the majority of these crazy numbers have been since the vets like Wood and Gordon were sat down?
I take that with a grain of salt. Obviously, if you watch the NBA long enough, you know how the end of the seasons kind of end. You can get fool's gold. The thing that I'm happy about is for Jalen and both KPJ, I've seen them do this before. So what we got to see was really confirmation of what they could be. It doesn't mean that, Jalen's going to average 30 next year. Some people are putting out there. What it does mean that he is a talented guy that belongs in the NBA, and he's somebody that should be scouted on by other teams when they come out next year. But watching the run that they went on, like I said, grain of salt, because for KPJ's part, I want to see him do that with more talent on the court. It's okay to score 30 plus points when it's just you and another really high talented guy, and you guys are throwing up 25 shots a game. But what can you do on this court when you have other talented guys that demand the ball and things like that? And for Jalen, The Toronto game gave me a little preview of what he needs to work on the most is like he needs to learn how to be able to read the defense when they are catered to stopping him. And that's to me, that's what separates your great players from your good players. If he can take advantage of his gravity and be able to make plays off of that, because that's what Toronto was begging him to do when they're putting three guys on you. You got to read that and crash that up and pass it out. But he still has that step he has to take in doing that. But I'm really excited to watch what he's done because he's improved so much in a short time.
Yeah, we saw with Harden, when you get that good, the weight of the court starts to move your way. It gets a lot harder. And of course, he's going to have to start dealing with that more and more. And I want to go to just Kevin Porter, because this is one of the more difficult things here, Frank, because the general feeling among the fan base, and certainly myself, he's not a point guard. And it makes way more sense to move him off the ball. He can defend multiple positions. From a size standpoint, he can handle it. I mean, yes, even with Jalen Green, I think you can move him to small forward with 6'6". He's got the size and everything that you would need as a small forward. I'm a believer that point guards and leaders, they're born. They're not created. You can't just like go, okay, here, go out, be a leader, be a point guard. Do you 100% agree with what I'm saying? And if so, is there any way the Rockets or KPJ would go for this after doing this year-long experiment?
I agree with what you said. I do agree. I share that thought. It's like to me, I see a point guard, and if we're gonna do the semantics, I know there's a lot of definitions out there, but the way I view a point guard on a team is the guy that is gonna initiate your offense and be the most dominant ball handler and kind of set the pace of the team. So as we know in the current NBA, there's a lot of variations of guys that initiate offense and do that. But so for Kevin Porter, can he be? I guess the question we're trying to ask is, can he be the guy that you trust to dictate the shots that every other guy gets, dictate the pace that you play with, dictate the offensive sets you get into, and not just in a game in March, but let's say in a playoff series. And that question to me is still open. I'm not going to marry the name point guard to him, but to me, he's grown a little bit in that aspect. I think he's grown as a basketball player a lot this season, just overall in his defense, and we see him get more comfortable throughout. But as far as those things that I look at when I watch him play, is his pace, decision making, how fast he initiates, shot selection, when to get guys involved, and when to go put his foot on the gas and score. And I still think he struggles in that department. And what people equate with him doing well as a point guard is him just scoring. If he scores, and to me, that's where he's best suited, when he's a scorer, and then he can create off of that. But that doesn't serve the general team that the same impact that a traditional point guard would have. So I still think that jury's still out. I think the team should, they should explore it more. But in the meantime, I think there are other guys on the team that would be able to provide some of those services if he's not able to do it. Like I said, teams do it different ways. The Spurs, for example, they had a bunch of high IQ players that were able to initiate at different points of the game, depending on what the situation was. The Warriors, Steph Curry is not a traditional point guard, but I do trust him with the pace and all that stuff. But Draymond was their guy. So if maybe Alperen can become that in the future, or they get a guy that could be on the court with Kevin Porter, with Jalen Green, with Alperen, and still allow them to be themselves, but help them with that pace and do all those little things, those nuances of the position that you're referring to, then I think he can coexist as a ball dominant guard. But like I said, the jury's still out.
Yeah, he spent a lot of time this year dribbling, and he's not moving the ball quickly. The ball's not popping around when he's gets the ball coming up court. He kind of, it feels like he's thinking through a lot of things still. And I just feel like it's because this is not what he's naturally good at. I just thought about this, Frank, today a little bit, looking it over, like, what could you do? It's a bad point guard draft. Dyson Daniels, maybe some potential. I don't really have the patience, though, to develop another horrible shooter. The Rockets are loaded with those guys already. We have a lot of shooting projects, but one thing I like is having a pro point guard on the floor. Schroeder, very much a backup plan for me. Would you consider making a run at Jalen Brunson, a free agent? You don't have to look at him as, oh, this is the end all be all forever, but he's somebody that you get him under, under contract here, and for a couple of years or something like that. If somebody in the draft comes along, you can get him under a contract where you could potentially trade him or something like that, or move him to like your sixth guard that's coming off the bench or something like that. Is that somebody that you would be interested in? They would probably have to do a little cap gymnastics to fit him in. I'm assuming he's probably going to be, about $20 million a year or something in that neighborhood. What do you think about somebody like Brunson?
I mean, that would be, to me, that's the prototype you want, because he has the IQ and the pace, and he can play next to a super ball dominant player like Luka. So that tells me that he can coexist with Luka. At least takes up at least two of our guys as far as when it comes to shots. So he can be on that type of team. A guy that I would really really love, and this is just like a side dream of mine, would be somebody like Fred VanVleet. Because I think him just overall, one thing I'm concerned about Jalen is the defense. And with our other players, uh, they're not the greatest defenders. Obviously, we have the worst defense in the league. So I think any addition to this team has to be a plus on the defensive side. And so for a guard like Jalen, that'll be the only concern that I would have. Maybe in a few years when Kevin Porter and Jalen Green and all these guys develop more IQ on that side of the ball and are able to use their athletic abilities to be lockdown defenders. But I think what we need right now is plus defenders across the board in every position, because our defense is porous. But that type is the dream. Low usage, high IQ, that is a good table setter and will be able to get your offense in gear. And I think Coach Silas, honestly, I think if he could have it his way, and he made that comment about dumbing down the offense a bit. If he had a Jalen Brunson, we might get to see his offensive genius uh, show. But I think a lot of the things that he had to deal with were due to lack of available parts for him. So, yeah.
Yeah, the thing that I look at when I see Jalen Green is he's a pretty frail 6'4", and even putting size on him. And I've talked about this talked about it with Jackson Gatlin on the podcast. It's a concern for me because he doesn't have a wide base, to start with. He doesn't have big shoulders. He's 6'4". Everybody talks about Chet Holmgren's frame, and they're concerned about him in the draft. But Jalen Green doesn't have that frame that you can put a lot of stuff with. So you feel like with Jalen Green, you're going to need a bigger guard with him. That's the one benefit of Porter is he does work with Jalen Green defensively if they continue to improve defensively quite a bit.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think Jalen he can put on muscle. He has the frame to bulk up a bit. He to me over if you look at him from when he came in this season till now, he put on a little bit of muscle as well. And it's really hard to tell with these. I mean, he's 19. His adult metabolism is definitely going to hit him around his mid-20s, where all of us slow down a little bit in that department. And for them, luckily for NBA players that are skinny and super athletic, they get swoller. For the rest of us, we just get a little chubby. So hopefully that'll help him out. But I'm not as far as I'm really impressed with his defense. I mean, his on-ball defense is his athleticism really helps him in that department. And like you said, what he lacks is just size. Like bigger defenders just literally just walk right over him. But if it's a guy that's his size, I'm really confident that he's going to be one of those guys that you can throw on a Steph Curry. I mean, I saw him guard John Moran in the win against Memphis pretty much the whole game because Kevin Porter's ankle was tweaked up that game, and he did a pretty good job. And so, yeah, I would say for him is just getting bigger, and that's why this offseason is real big. He said it himself. The main thing he needs to do is work on his core strength, get his legs stronger so his shots, he can throw them up at a decent clip and hit them and not be so streaky, and play defense. But one thing I will say though, he talks about defense a lot, and it does feel good to have a potential star that is defensively minded. As you know, we're coming out of the past 6 years or so ago. with our previous suitor here that was in Houston.
Yeah, that was not fun, and I love the fact that he's serious about it. And there's no question. The one thing about Jalen Green is he works hard. He wants to get better. And speaking of a guy that looks to be the same type of player, and this is another serious long-term question. Alperen Sengun, I need to preface this by saying I love Sengun, and he, along with Green, kept me from turning off the games this year. However, multiple concerns about him long term. Defensively, he's improved a ton, Frank, but his lateral footwork, it's a real concern for me. I'm not sure that's something that's improvable to the point where it's not targeted in a real playoff situation. I'm always thinking in those terms because if you want to win, that's what you got to think of. And look at Carmelo Anthony, and he never great, really good scorer, but could never figure that out. I've got one other thing on Sengun, but I'll let you tackle that one first.
Yeah, the valid concerns, and I've been in plenty of discussions about his limitations. But I mean, to me, he's a high IQ guy. I can live with that as far as me not knowing, because I think he's going to figure it out. There have been a lot of non-athletic players. If they have high IQ, positioning, things like that. Plus, he flashes playing on the perimeter from time to time. I don't know if it's a fatigue thing for him right now, but I've seen him guard competently really quick players. It's just that sometimes he looks horrible. Like they will just literally just walk right by him. I think Trae Young did something to him at the game that was something nasty that I was
Well,
like,
he
oh my
does it
God.
to a lot of people.
Yeah, a lot of people. But as far for Alp, I mean the height is an issue. I compare him to Pau Gasol, but he's a shorter version of him, and that's really the comp that everybody says Jokic or all these people. I watch him, man. If you remember how Pau and Kobe used to play off, to me that'll be a dream if Jalen and Sengun can get a two-man game that looks that beautiful. I mean, they were like connected, and I just see that the passing Pau had. He was not athletic, slow-footed, but just by putting his big body in position he was able to be a plus defender and be on a championship roster. And to me, it goes back to what are you surrounding them with? I know Jalen is a high IQ guy and he's going to figure it out at some point. What are we adding? It's not going to be teams with what we currently have now. I don't want to rag on anybody. Guys like Christian Wood and Jae'Sean Tate. Jae'Sean Tate's high IQ, but just the playing style and the mix with Jalen and LP, I really don't see that. So I think the front office really has to consider the strengths and the limitations of these players. If these guys are going to be the guys you move forward with, and what type of team are you going to build around them? Because it's easy when you're just trying to figure out stuff, and we give them a pass. Everybody's happy right now. But if we're next summer having a podcast and we're still top 5 in the lottery, it's not going to be the same vibes for everybody. I think time will tell us what LP is going to be and all these other guys, but also what can Rafael Stone do to bolster up the roster to hide some of those deficiencies they have.
You mentioned the next thing I was going to bring up because everybody just makes this big assumption that Sengun can just morph into Jokic, but Jokic's passing along with other parts of his offense, they're based on his shooting. Jokic came into the NBA with the jumper. I mean, Sengun doesn't even appear to have a 10 or 12 footer at this point. Now all of a sudden, we're trying to make him into a 3-point shooter. Jokic was 80% from the free throw line in year one. That's a real portent usually of your shooting. Sengun, not so much, about 70%. Sengun shot 25% this year from three. No one was within light years of him when he shot, and he's shooting set shots in slow motion at this point. What do you feel like is the ceiling, or do you feel like the expectation for him has gotten to be a little bit too much at this point?
I think he pushes the expectations by how well he flashes. If he can get to a 33% 3-point shot, I'm happy with that for him because his spacing really is with his vision, and his passing is really what opens up his game and his IQ. I do find it kind of weird that the current NBA they start shooting outside in, where you want to give him a 3. To me, he should be taking more mid-range shots, closer to the basket, working on the glass, some of those things, and build your way out from there. And I'm not sure if that's what the coaching philosophy of Coach Silas is, for bigs. To me, my biggest concern for Sengun or any bigs that come to Houston is how they're going to be utilized within this offense that we run. Because I've seen his offense in Dallas, and it's either you're going to be a roll man or you're going to be on the perimeter. So it's one of the two. So I haven't really seen this style of five out offense really feature a prominent big person at the kind of the point of the attack. And I think Sengun is a very talented player. So yeah, I am concerned about that going forward. I do hope that his work ethic and just his skill, he has a pretty shot. It doesn't go in. It doesn't look pretty when it hits the rim, but it looks pretty up until the release point. So I'm not a shooting guru, but a lot of people say that if your form is okay, then you can become competent at some point. So that's what I'm hoping for him.
I'm not super excited that he's going to Turkey this summer to play Euro
Yeah,
ball.
Me either.
He's not going to be working on any of that stuff because they don't want him, in a lab overplaying there for his country. I just don't see that happening.
Yeah, to me, and I'm just finding this. I heard about it. I didn't know it was confirmed. To me, he's too young to be doing that as a player. Honestly, I know the Rockets don't. It's he has the freedom to do that. But my biggest thing that I wanted, if you remember on the spaces we were talking about, was trying to get these guys should lock themselves in a gym together all summer and just hoop and just learn to play with each other and just work out like together, not in different countries, but they need to just everywhere. They need to go everywhere, travel around the country, just playing basketball as a team. And I don't like that either, that he's going to Turkey because, he's not going to have that continuity with the rest of the guys and the training staff here that they have. But, he is a MVP over there. So I know they would require him to come back.
I need him in Miyagi or with Miyagi in a boat working on that balance. The balance is a big deal for him. And I feel like he falls down too much. He gets off of his feet a lot, that kind of thing. So you just want him to get a little bit better at that. Now, my next thing is, and you and we've talked about this on Spaces. A lot of people have biggest concern, the poor coaching. Part of this is young players, and I get it. But I watched Miami bring in undrafted free agents. Everybody knows, what to do over there, where to be on the court. They look like an oiled machine, no matter how many injuries they get. And I mean, it's defensive rotations with the Rockets, transition defense, blocking out. I mean, I saw even in the last game, I'm watching Sengun, and the ball goes up. There's a guy right next to him, and instead of blocking him out, he goes underneath the basketball rim. And I'm like, where is the instruction on that? Why is that not a little bit closer to being fixed at game 82 of the season? And all the feel-good chemistry between, the staff and the players, it's been great. But even when you're losing, the habits you want to see have not been there. And hey, the mess that we saw a lot of the year worked because you locked into that top 5 pick. So you got that out of it. But are you wasting valuable time, Frank, moving forward if Silas is still the coach next year?
I think next year is the test. 2020, COVID, blah, blah, blah. I mean, I don't give anybody with a job as a coach a pass because in relation to every other coach is the same. So somebody won the championship that year, right? So 2021, young guys, 400, blah, blah, blah. So the lights are on now. Starting this year, the pressure is going to be on because you can't have 3 consecutive worst seasons in a row for that. And I'm sure that will be the test for him because he has the talent. Because we've actually, I did something when I looked at the average age of our roster, and we have one of the oldest tanking teams in the league. If you look at the rosters for Oklahoma City, for Detroit, for Orlando, the average ages are like 22 or 23 or below. And they still look structured for the most part. Even though they lose or whatnot, there's still some structure. Our average age is 26 for our starting 5, right?
But is John Wall still counting into that?
No, I'm just the starters. The starting 5, I think our average age was 26 years old with Tate, Wood. Sure. So these are older guys. And the reason I bring that up is that, like, to your point, we're not losing just because of youth. I mean, for the most of the year, we've had veterans playing. Eric Gordon was playing 30 plus minutes for more than half the season. On there, he's a former Sixth Man of the Year. Christian Wood is a multi-year NBA vet. Playing Kevin Porter. I don't care. People say, "Oh, he's just a rookie." He's not basically a rookie. He's had multiple off seasons as a professional. He's a third-year player. The only rookies or young guys we really had were Jalen Green on that starting five. The rest of the guys in those rotations were veterans. So what does that say that a lot of these issues and how bad we were this year compared to our other counterparts, some of them better than us, some of them, well, I don't think nobody was worse. One of them tied with us. So yeah, to your point, yeah, he has to show something because to people that watch basketball, I'm not into Twitter fandom and all the, idealistic stuff that goes on there. To me, like it's an age. If you watch the NBA long enough, you know how these things go. Do I think he's going to be here when we get to where we're trying to go? No, I don't think so. You know how these go. He gets in. He's the guy they kind of use to get all their talent. Then when they feel like they're ready to make a move to the next level, they bring in somebody that's more established to kind of take that leap. He just has to show something, even not for this team, but for him as a coach, as a head coach. If he ever wants to get a job in the NBA as a head coach again, he has to show something. The guys are there. We have enough talent, plus you're adding a first-round pick to be a play-in team next year, and that's the minimum expectation I have, is to be, at minimum, have a chance to be in the play-in. Not a lottery team, a play-in team. Some people are trying to tank. I'm not. So I think he has a lot to prove because you're right. It's been pretty there's been some pretty bad red flags that I've seen this year.
Yeah, it's like for me, this is a treadmill where you could be running in place with, and I don't want to be running in place with these guys. And, he said on Monday, I'm simplifying a bunch on offense and defense, or I have simplified a bunch on offense and defense this year. He's going to open up the playbook more, and I know everybody's going to go, look, that's, he was doing stuff differently. However, this isn't about a playbook or whatever. On defense, whatever scheme you're teaching, you're teaching them to rotate on fast breaks. You want to be teaching them to rotate back when a shot goes off. That can't be something that you just said we're not going to worry about this year. I mean, that I don't understand.
No, I agree. I mean, that the simplification of the offense, I get. You don't have I'm guessing his mind is like Luka level. So he has Jalen Green and Kevin Porter. So that's, but the defensive thing, to me, is not even defense. It's just a hustle. Like, what really made me kind of just go nuts over the season was people not running back. And to me, like I told you, I played football. And one of the things that our coach, when you watch film with coaches, they will embarrass you if you're not showing effort. And that, to me, there's coaches, that's one of the most, like, if a player, you can get beat on a play, but if you're just like not showing effort, I mean, my coach he'll rewind it like 50 times and call you every name in the book all 50 times. So I don't get how our guys could watch film with their coaching staff and put some of those clips they put on where they get fouled or think they get fouled and just sit down on the court while the other team goes on a 5-on-3 fast break or 5-on-4 fast break, or they just don't give any effort on closing out, literally just quit in the middle of a play. And not in game 1 or game 10, but guys were doing this pretty much throughout the whole season. And to me, that is what's concerning, because what does that speaks to kind of the respect and kind of the culture setting. I feel like they're doing a good job of setting a player-friendly environment where everybody feels inclusive and welcome, and it's safe for them, and they feel good and empowered. But as far as the culture of accountability, that is what concerns me, because those are the things that we know work in sports when you're trying to get to that level. Are you holding guys accountable? I was disappointed to see some of those same mistakes of guys sitting on the court. And that, to me, that just sticks out. Christian Wood, Kevin Porter, those guys, they'll get a call or not get a call and just sit there and just pout and not run back back to the other side of the court. Those things like that really say a lot to me. And that is what I'm concerned about, is him being able to hold those guys to the fire, because you don't go from a lovey-dovey coach to just this hard nose, we're going to get it done coach just over a summer. So I'm concerned about his approach.
In my world, I'm out looking. I would be shocked if the Rockets are going to be out looking. But what's interesting is Frank Vogel got fired. Now, in my world, I'm going to talk to Frank Vogel because that guy won a championship. He's taken teams very far in the East with the Pacers. But one of the things that I thought about, and he ain't coming here as an assistant, but maybe you poach somebody off of that staff. For example, David Tisdale, who was also with the Miami Heat, and Spoelstra for 9 years. That's somebody I would consider. Phil Handy is not a name a lot of people know, but he's been on championship staffs with the Lakers, Raptors, and Cavs. 3 titles in 6 years. That's the kind of thing that at least they need to be thinking about this offseason, because Will Weaver or John Lucas or who's ever designing the defense, it's, we're not seeing the progress like we said. So, that's where you can improve, I guess, is through your assistants.
Man, that is such an underrated part of a program, is the coaching staff. I think fans get caught up on the player, so on the court, but as you know, to be a winning organization, you need to win at 3 levels: the court, on the bench with the coaches, and in the front office. And for us right now, our rebuild is in all 3. We have a new owner, we have a bunch of new players, rookies and young guys, and we have a rookie coach essentially that's trying to figure it out. And the pessimist in me will say that whatever we're trying to do, as good as it looks, the NBA history will tell us we're not going to be successful with the current dynamics we have right now, with all of those phases being with people still trying to figure out who they are. So, getting a coach, Frank Vogel, I don't think Frank Vogel, even though if we could get him, I don't think that'd be a healthy climate for Silas because you basically have a guy that's a champion. So I don't think that would be, I think his assistants, like, they need to revamp that staff. There are too many unproven guys on, not all of them, but some of them are just like, you can't put a rookie coach with a rookie assistant with a second year this guy and this guy that's just coming from this league. Like they could have helped them out more. I'm not sure what the motivation was behind that roster of coaches they put around, but I'm hoping that the little thing that they said, Stone made a comment about it's Silas's choice decision about the staff when somebody asked him. Man, Silas comes. He's a bloodline coach, so I know there are guys in this league that would, if not for anything, for respect out of his father, want to be on a staff to help him out because he is respected around the league. And if they can bolster up his staff, I mean, go look at the championship. Go look at to do an exercise. Anybody's watching this, go to your last 5 championships. Go look on their bench. Who's coaching? Half of them are former head coaches, former champions. Like it's like all-star game coaching version of all-star games on these championship teams. It's not a coincidence that a guy like in Toronto, where they had a great winning program, even though they didn't win a championship, Nick Nurse took the reins and bam, he's there. So they've had Nick Nurse on that staff. A level of coach like that was a staff. Eric Spoelstra in Miami, somebody that was a video editor moving up the ranks, he was there on that staff. Who is that on our staff that we could say, okay, this guy is the next this or that? So yeah, we definitely, a lot of uncertainties, man. The only positive I have right now is Jalen Green. Just like Mike, my space host, would take. He said he doesn't care about anything else, but as long as Jalen Green looks like he's supposed to be good, at least we have a little bit of something to build off of.
Yeah, the only guy that, frankly, I realistically see coming over from the Lakers is maybe John Lucas III, because there's a little bit of connection with him here. But let me go through the vets one by one, and I want you to tell me if you want them back, and then what do you think's really going to happen? So I'll start with Eric Gordon. You want him back?
I love Eric Gordon. I think they should have traded him this previous year. He is a great presence on the court for our guys. When I was on the Locked On Rockets pod with Jackson, I pulled up the stat that showed when he was on the court, there's like a 10-point swing in the plus minus for the team. So, do I want him back? Yes, but if they will trade him at the deadline, I like the presence he brings, but I think he needs to go at some point because I don't see his purpose on this roster at this point. So yeah, I like EG, but I think he's served this role as the guys kind of advance. It's just, it's either he's going to be a six man, but I don't really want him to be starting on this team, taking up the slot of somebody else that could be potentially here when we're trying to win a championship.
You think he is going to be back though?
Yes, I think he'll be back, and because I really don't see a world. I mean, the offers are still probably going to be a late first round pick or a second in the future, right? So, I mean, for them, I really don't see what the purpose would be unless they're trying to make moves in the offseason to free up some spots for somebody else to come in and take that role. His last year of his contract is going to be the year after this one coming up, and it's non-guaranteed. So there are some things there that they could do, but I would keep him just, if anything, as money for a trade.
And Eric Gordon is somebody that, you could use if you were to sign a Brunson. I don't see that happening, but that's the kind of guy that you might need to flip. Just not because, not because necessarily the Mavs would want, but they're likely getting nothing for Brunson. It's too difficult.
And he's a positive value guy. I mean, even like you're saying, if I'm giving you equal salary for a trade and it's Eric Gordon, that's not a stretch for you to say yes. Like some other players, they'd be like, you got to throw in a little sweetener on there. But with Eric Gordon, I mean, okay, yeah, that's Eric Gordon. He can come off the bench for you and score 15 points and play good defense. So I think he's a valuable trade piece for us. If anything, he's a salary.
Christian Wood, you want him?
Okay, I'm torn on this because I have a theory about Christian Wood that I think if he had better players around him that are better than him, he would be a better player. I think just like with Garrison Matthews, what our team was this year, a bunch of guys playing out of their tax bracket, and he was one of them. Christian Wood should never be. Well, let me not say never, because he's still a young man, but he is not anyone's best player. So if he was in the proper slot in the hierarchy on a team, I could see his skill set being valuable, and also with people that are able to hold him accountable. Example: if Christian Wood was in Golden State, do you think he would be quitting in the middle of defensive plays with Draymond Green on the court with him? No, right? So for him, it's effort. And we just don't have the players right now for that. If they can go get a Draymond or somebody that's going to get in everybody's face and like, no, we're going to play good defense and do all this stuff because Silas is not going to do it, then yes. But because of that, because we don't have that guy, I want them to trade him. Because of that dynamic of him really not understanding the hierarchy of what it needs to be and where he thinks he is, I think that's going to cause some issues. Plus, they need to trade him quickly because he's going to be an expiring contract next year. And I am not excited to see what Christian Wood as an expiring contract looks like on our team. Oh my God. Can you imagine?
I feel like that's kind of the way he plays anyways. The big thing for me, I don't know what you think is going to happen, but I think he's gone unless the Rockets end up with, maybe they end up with Jaden Ivey or Shaden Sharp or, AJ Griffin. But most scenarios I see in the draft, Wood's gone. I mean, he's getting in the way is what he's doing.
He is. And it was apparent from March through the end of the year how the team played. Even though they weren't, the best team in the world, they played better. Everybody pretty much played better. And, I haven't really looked at the numbers to see how their defense fared. I know some of the games got pretty ugly, but just in the aggregate, what it looked like. But they just played better, and the chemistry is better. I think everybody functions a little better when I don't think it's his fault. It's just that he demands so much for what his style of play. And I think with our young guys and them trying to figure out who they are, it's just competing priorities. He's at a different point in his career, and he's trying to get paid. And God bless him for that, and go for it, brother. But this team we're not trying to satisfy Christian Wood's career goals right now. We're trying to rebuild. And that those two dynamics are competing with each other, and it's not going to get any better if they don't extend them. So if they're not going to extend them, if they're going to keep them to go into free agency, it'll get ugly. Because I can imagine. Can you imagine Christian Wood has a bad 2 weeks in like March, and it's like we're frisky for a playing spot, and he got to get paid. Look off Jalen. Jalen has 30 points. I'm going to look him up. I got to get these numbers. So I'm worried about that. I don't want that. Like I think they need to move him in the summer if possible.
Yeah, you cannot improve your defense with Christian Wood on the floor. I'm sorry. I'm hearing people say, "Oh, let's try him at small forward," or what. No. There's no way. I feel like he kind of is what he is as far as a defensive player. And I remember at the All-Star break, he said, "Oh, I'm going to put 150% of defense in the second half to see what have you been doing." I mean, that's what you.
He had 3 good games. He tried for like 3 or 4 games. I'll give him that.
And he's this guy that just when he gets hit in the mouth. Some people, when they get hit in the mouth, they come back harder. He's not one of those guys. End of story.
Right. Just, yeah, to me, I'm not going to, his basketball IQ is really where he loses me, because some of the decisions, especially on defense, is just lacking a lot of, and for his age, he's going to be 27. To me, like you said, you are what you are. He could marginally get better in shooting and random stuff like that, but like the point guard thing and defensive intensity it's a personality trait. You can't flip it on and off. Some guys are just dogs, and I don't think that's in him for that side of the ball.
Any one of these 3 guys you want to bring back, or any of them that you think the Rockets are going to bring back? Schroeder? Fernando?
Schroeder, no. I think I'm intrigued by Fernando. I'm very intrigued because what we really need is what he provides. And if they can get him for a minimum, like, why not? Because we're gonna try to get a big. I'm really intrigued because I didn't know. I've never watched him play in any stretch. I've watched him. I think he was in Atlanta at some point. He might have been there for a little bit. I kind of watched him. He didn't really look that impressive. I think he might have been a rookie or a sophomore year, but he has pretty good footwork and better finishing than I ever thought. I thought he was just one of those clunky bigs that's just out there to set screens, but he has a little bit of game, and he's only 23. So unless he's trying to go out there and get a big contract, I don't see what's wrong with bringing it. He fits the timeline. He's huge, even though he's not the tallest. He's just a big guy, and he's an uber athlete. And if they can develop a guy out of the, any of the core guys we have, I think they should try to see what they can do with Fernando. Other than that, nobody else. Schroeder doesn't, he can help, but I just don't see why he would want to be on our team, honestly. But everybody else probably has to go. And Tate, Tate. I think Tate. Were you going to ask about Tate?
Because I wasn't going to ask about him, but I've been in a debate with a fan of my podcast, and we've discussed a lot about him, and I just feel like he is highly overrated by the fans of what he is. It's that, and you guys have talked about it on your spaces, but sometimes it's there's a guy that's doing something on defense and it looks impressive because nobody else is worth a darn on defense. And that's kind of a lot of what I see from Tate, but you just can't have a guy like that on a team that's going to make a championship run. So the future of him to me isn't there. And he's 6'4", maybe 6'5". I don't know. He's in that range. I get that he's big, but I don't see any guys at his size that cannot shoot and are not a vertical threat whatsoever as a guy that's going to, be on this championship team. Even I would say coming off the bench, even as the 7th or 8th guy, like I would have preferred this year that he played off the bench, because really the future, especially as the year progressed, you saw it in Kenyon Martin, you saw it in Christopher. I would have rather seen those guys get a little bit more minutes, even at the 3, even though I know they didn't like them at the 3, but I thought it was worth putting them at the 3 So Matthews and Tate were not out there as much. And I didn't understand that. And, if Tate's around next year, I got no issue with it, but please put him on the bench. I mean, he's not a starter, and he's about a 15 to 20-minute guy, even on a Rockets team.
Yeah, I love him as a concept and as a player, like what he brings and all the intangible stuff. But yeah, I mean, everything you said is pretty spot on. I think for him, the role they have him playing in is just a lot of guys on our team this past year were playing roles that, the old folks say, they're playing bigger than their britches. And uh, those things like Garrison, Matthews, Tate, they all need to be scaled back. And what I'm hoping for is, as talent is infused and you're getting these draft picks and you're getting these free agents come in, they just slide down the rung of that ladder of playing time and just go to where they belong, which is spot minutes off the bench. Um, Going forward, definitely KJ Martin needs to take that starting role from him. He's a better just all around fit for the team. He's not a high scoring, high usage guy. If I don't know if you saw the little graphic animation I put up of the shot attempts, there was a good portion of the season where Tate was second on the team in field goal attempts. In what universe is that legal? That should be illegal, right? With a team with all these young scorers, up until maybe February when Jalen started becoming more aggressive, or they let him become more aggressive, or he just chose to become more aggressive. Tate was one of our top. Him and Christian Wood were sharing the highest field goal attempts on the team. So once again, that does talk about coaching, though. Like, what goes on with the coaching staff to let that happen, and how do you allow that to happen? So yeah, he is off the bench guy. He has, to me, that PJ Tucker thing. Even though PJ is a bigger player, PJ can shoot, but PJ didn't always have those skill sets. He could always defend. He had to go to other leagues and be a journeyman to get his 3-point shot down. And I don't think we have that time on this team for Tate to make that full circle where he develops some of those holes and patches them up in his game without being a liability on a bad team. So I can see that, maybe at some point in the future, he can be a great player on a championship team because he has that tenacity. He is a dog. He plays really hard. He's high IQ, but too many limitations right now. I think they like him because of all the other intangibles, though. But as talent comes in, that's going to really be outweighed by talent. Like, I can get a rah-rah guy that can hit shots too, so I don't need him to be a sub 30% three-point shooter.
The other thing about his 3-point shooting is, he's 26 now. If it's going to happen, it would have happened by now. I mean, he's played in pro leagues. He's been around. He sees what's going on with the NBA. You would think you're in the gym all the time. If he was going to get better at it, he would have gotten better at it. Number two, the high IQ thing. I mean, I guess, but I see him do a lot of boneheaded stuff. And it seems like once a game, he commits a foul on a fast break that it wasn't a thing where there wasn't a thing where the other team had numbers or they're already in the bonus. So why are you committing a foul there? There's no point in committing a foul if they're already in the bonus because you're just going to send them to the free throw line. Right. They're going to knock down 2 free throws. You're slowing the game down. You're the Rockets. You want the game sped up. That's the way we play. So that kind of stuff bugs the hell out of me. There's just a bunch of times where he just takes a foul or he gets mad and he commits a technical. I mean, why is Jae'Sean Tate, getting a bunch of technicals? There is some IQ things where I think everybody says this, and this, but I see this other stuff and I'm like, yeah, but that's bothering me.
Yeah, that's true. The technicals definitely that bother me. I don't think he has enough cachet I'm sure he probably leads our team in technicals. But his defense, he can play defense. I've watched, obviously if you watch him play, he is a great on-ball defender for multiple positions. So I'm not going to undersell him on that. I think where you see him get into foul trouble and all that is because of where we have him playing defense at. We're throwing Jae'Sean Tate on everybody. Tate, go guard LeBron. You're guarding KD. I mean, he's, he's good and he's been a pro, but he's still a young guy and he's 6'4". So I think the team's lack of other good defensive players really puts him at a disadvantage, especially when your center, Christian Wood, has you guarding Jonas Valanciunas. So you know what I mean. So that's the dynamic there. I can see him like, let's say we draft Jabari Smith, and you have better shooting and better defense on the court. Tate can survive. The problem is we have too many non-shooters on the court, multiple, that are, even though they can make shots, they're not good shooters. That's a problem. If Tate is going to become like a really really good defender, I think he can be, and he can be a great team defender. And he can maybe even he can even be on a good team or a great team. But you really, and this is what I don't like to try to cover up for role guys. But if you can build a roster that has good defense and good shooting, then you could afford to have him out there. The problem is, right now our roster lacks good defense and good shooting.
Yeah, and if he's going to be a starter on a championship team, I understand he plays good. He needs to be Draymond Green level defense. If
Right.
he's going to be,
Right.
just literally no shooting whatsoever. And Draymond Green does a lot of other stuff that people forget
Yes,
about
yes,
too.
playmaking and yep, all the story.
So, how we could go on and on, but want to wrap things up. Tell people what the HTX Chop Shop is.
What it is basically once the season was going on, and we had a lot of thoughts as we started doing the spaces, me, Xavier, and Mike on Twitter, of trying to just see what the fans were speaking on. Like fans, like different people. You come on our spaces. Our spaces is not as friendly as people basically speak their opinions, and we like that about it. And we saw a lot of the media platforms weren't really hypercritical of the team as a healthy journalist or a healthy fan base should be. To me, there's almost this too much of a buddy relationship. And so what we wanted to do was create an open platform for fans to voice their opinions on a team, good, bad, or indifferent. And so it's just a group of people that came together. We have different skill sets. People do different things, and it's open for any. Like somebody writes and you want to write an article about the team, we have a website. You could post it on there with no affiliation to us whatsoever. If you do graphic designing and you want to post something, our Twitter page is going to post it up for you. We have an Instagram. So we just created a platform where fans could be genuine. They could be true. You don't have to police your thoughts. If you don't like Christian Wood, then you can say so. If you love Kevin Porter Jr., then scream it at the top of your lungs. But just creating an open platform for people to share their love or hate for what the Rockets are doing. And I think it's a concept that a lot of people gravitate towards. And that's really what you see when you come on our spaces as well.
I assume you got some planned for the offseason too.
Oh yeah, we got a lot of stuff coming up this offseason. We're going to be doing some retrospective views on the team. Obviously, you got to find things to fill in the time, but never really dug deep into some of our previous Rockets team. We're going to be looking at some of the championship runs teams. We're looking at the Harden era, doing some postmortems on that. Also, the draft obviously coming up. We have some guys working on some draft stuff, free agency, potential free agents. The playoffs, we're going to try to cover a lot of that with using some of the same structures with the spaces, data graphics, people writing articles about that. So we'll just try to keep things going. One thing I love about where we are now with Rockets content is that there's so many outlets for it, and so many different perspectives. And I'm a basketball Rockets junkie, and I can never get enough. So the more, the merrier. So if it's whether it's from you, from Jackson, from people on the Chop Shop, from the Dream Shake, from Locked On Rockets, the Clutch City, I just consume from Apollo. I consume all of it, and I think as fans, it is a golden age for us right now because we have so many great people putting out good stuff, and I'm just happy to be a part of it and be somebody that can help others share their talents.
One of the things I like specifically about you is I've been in journalism for most of the last 30 years. So, you have to come at things with a little bit more of a middle ground, but you can do it and still be a Rockets fan, which I am, and criticizing them as part of the game. And you can do that and still you're criticizing them because you're trying to figure out how they can get better. And I think that's what you do. And I think some of your guys over there do that. And I really love what you guys, it just, sometimes you just want to hear what's going on in the community, what people are thinking. It used to be more of a sports radio thing. I don't think people are checking out the radio as much as they used to. So this is like the new, sports radio post game show or that sort of stuff. And it's really great stuff. And man, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you coming on, and hopefully we can do this again sometime soon.
Yeah, for sure. And just one last thing. That's exactly what it is. I think it's a generational thing. I grew up listening to sports radio. I love sports radio, and it's the personalities of the people that are kind of moderating the discussions amongst the fans. And now with Twitter, a lot of the fan base on Twitter are, probably 25 and younger, and they don't really understand fandom how it used to be before social media, where it is healthy for you to criticize your team. In fact, that was the expectation. You were always on them about what was going on. And for our fan base, I think we need to learn to do that, because if we're ever going to be a championship team, it takes us also holding the team accountable and being that voice. Any historic championship team in any city, whether it's in Boston, Los Angeles, and New York, go check out their fan bases and see what that relationship is like. We're not, I don't want us to get toxic like they are, but that's a healthy thing.
Don't be Utah. Don't be Portland.
Yeah, right. It's healthy. It's good to have that healthy skepticism and always keep the team on their toes. And that's what championship level cities, that's what they do. And we are trying to get back to that. And that's when, that's one of the things we're trying to do is we got to keep the fire to them so they don't screw this up for us.
New York fans, you might not like them, but their passion is real. And those people don't cut any corners if they don't like what's going on, and that's okay. Well, I appreciate it. And thanks so much for doing this. And we'll talk again soon.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me.
You're listening to Houston Sports Talk.
Don't forget to follow Houston Sports Talk on Facebook and Twitter. Subscribe to us on iTunes, Spotify, the Google Podcast app, or the Stitcher app. You can support us by giving us a 5-star review on iTunes or by telling your friends about us. Spread the word, everybody. Thanks for listening.